Come to order. The Pledge of Allegiance this morning will be led by the Boy Scout Pack 48, Den 1 and 6 from Golden. You ready? Okay.
Please join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Mr. Kohler, please take the roll.
Representatives Becker, Buck, Buckner, Conti, Corum, Court, Representative Court, Representative Court, Representative Court, Representative Court, Representative Court, Representative Court. He's here, I just don't know.
Oh, who we have? Sorry.
Court.
Absent.
Absent. Del Grosso. Dorr. Duran. Everett. Exum excused. Fields. Fisher. Foote. Garcia. Gardner. Giroux. Janal. Hamner. Holbert. Hollinghorst. Humphrey. Joshi. Kagan. Kraft-Tharp. Labuda. Present. Landgraf. Lawrence. Lebsock. Lee. May. McCann. McLaughlin. McNulty. Melton. Mitch Bush. Moreno. Representative Court is present. Murray excused. Navarro. Nordberg. Pabon. Pennison. Pedersen. Primavera. Priola. Rankin. Rosenthal. Ryden. Sane. Salazar. Schaefer. Scott. Singer. Sonnenberg. Stevens. Swam. Zabo. Tyler. Vigil. Waller. Williams. Representative Williams is excused. Wilson. Wright. Young. Speaker Ferrandino.
Morning, Corey. With 62 members present, 3 excused, a quorum is present. Representative Primavera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the reading of the Journal of Thursday, February 13th, 2014 be dispensed with and that it be approved and corrected by the Chief Clerk.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is adopted. Announcements and introductions. Representative Mitch Bush. And Representative Hamner for a ski report, I assume, as we get more and more snow in our mountains.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, indeed, we are going to get more and more snow in our mountains this weekend. I'm happy to report that Steamboat, where there's the greatest tree skiing on the planet and its family-friendly down-home community, got an inch last night. Beaver Creek, which will be the home of the 2015 World Championships, got 0 last night, but it's going to get a bunch this weekend. And Vail, like nowhere on earth, also the home of the 2015 World Championships, will be getting snow over the weekend. I'd also like to announce on behalf of Rep. Vigil that Wolf Creek, perennially more snow than anywhere else, is still at the top.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Hamner.
Colleagues, I'm sure the Speaker won't mind if we're all skiing this weekend and have to come in a little late on Monday. So,
You can come in late as long as it's at 10 a.m.
oh, okay. All right. Well, I thought it was worth a try. But anyway, hope you enjoy our resorts over the weekend. Thank you.
I have an announcement introduction. Members, I hope you enjoy your toffee for Valentine's Day. And I would be remiss if I didn't introduce the maker of our toffee, Rick Enstroms, who's with us here today. Someone joked I should find myself eating a piece of the toffee, but I'll just find myself $2 for introduction that's not under the rules. Further announcements and introductions. Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Monarch Ski Report, lots of snow, no traffic jams. You don't have to take your tent and camp out on the way home.
Representative Corum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And got to tell you about Telluride. Snow's always good, and they produce silver medalists in the Olympics. So there you go.
I think last night we had two medals from Colorado in the Olympics. No, it's a good thing. Representative McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I asked to be excused at about 11:45 today. I was already approved to be excused for the whole day, but we had a little problem with the weather back east. So if I could leave around 11:45 today.
Representative McCann will be excused as requested. We're happy to see you here at least this morning, even though your flight was delayed. Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'd like to introduce some visitors from the Anschutz University of Colorado School of Nursing over there in the corner. Let's welcome our future and current nurses.
Representative Joshi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I would like to be excused at 11:30 a.m. today also.
Representative Joshi be excused as requested. Please continue, Representative Joshi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you very much for stimulating our economy yesterday. I saw that. And anybody who didn't get the candies, I guess we got plenty of candies here, so please come and get it.
There's tons more candy over there if you want any. Valentine's Day, a day to increase our carb loads. Representative Pedersen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you. All of you amazing women who I work with should have a rose on your desk. Please let me know if you don't. I hope that you enjoy your day. I also want to say happy Valentine's Day to my best friend and companion, Ian Silveri.
Hey, what about all the guys? We don't get roses? I mean, really? I think that. How many men are in the chamber? I think $1 for every $1 for every man that's didn't get a rose. Okay, Representative Conti.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. My goodness, what a spirited debate we've got going here. We have to announce that we are having another iPad training today from noon until 2 p.m. And if you have not had your iPad updated this year, you need to get that done, and they are going to be helping you out with that process today from noon to 2. It's going to be upstairs, I believe, in one of the Senate committee rooms, and so please make sure that you get that handled today. Thank you.
Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I wanted to bring to your attention the flyer that you received today on your desks. This is about the Colorado Foundation for Water Education's legislative luncheon, which is coming up Wednesday the 19th at noon in Senate Committee Room 356. This is their annual event that they honor the legislature by coming over here and making presentations to update you and educate you a little bit more on Colorado water issues. I hope you will all attend. Lunch will be provided. It would be probably a good idea to kind of let us know about how many lunches to provide. So I'm keeping a list of RSVPs if you want to let me know. You should have also received in your mailboxes this flyer. This is from the Colorado State University College of Agricultural Sciences, and they are holding a reception at the University Club on Tuesday, February 25th from 5 to 7. And the event is to honor connecting cities and fields through agriculture. This will be a great opportunity for urban legislators and rural legislators to get together with bringing them together through the College of Agricultural Sciences, and I'll make further announcements about that later. Thank you.
Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is Colorado High School Press Association Day. We have, I don't know if we have anybody here yet in the chamber, but High School Press Association is the, there you go, good morning, how are you? The High School Press Association represents all the numerous high school papers. It's a road to journalism, and it's a great organization. I also wanted to take advantage of this and give a shout out to my Valentine, Barbara McLaughlin, who is the publisher of the El Diablo in Durango, Colorado, and she's been teaching at Durango High School for 22 years. So welcome to the Capitol. Thank you.
Representative Everett.
Oh. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a Cub Scout group in the gallery, hopefully, right now. I'd like to recognize them and welcome them to the legislature. If you guys are here, please stand.
I think they're right up there. Representative Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, slight correction on my earlier announcement. The iPad training today is going to be in House Committee Room 109. So we're moving it down to the basement this time. House Committee Room 109 from noon until 2. Also, on another note, CLBA is giving out cake pops, and they will be in the back of the room with the sergeant, so don't forget to pick up your cake pops in the back of the chamber at the sergeant's desk. Thanks, and happy Valentine's Day.
Representative Landgraf. Representative Landgraf. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to recognize Sproul Junior High. We have two groups here with their teacher, Sean Kelly, and they're up in the back if everybody wants to say howdy. I think maybe they're leaving, coming.
I think they're back on the left over there. Representative Hamner, and I believe the Capitol Choir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You've got it right. We have a very special birthday in the House today, a Valentine's birthday, so I need to call the Capitol Choir. And anyone wearing red or pink is welcome to come on down so that we can have a beautiful photo op down here as we wish a very happy birthday to Representative Williams, our Valentine's sweetheart.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Representative Williams. Happy birthday to you.
Any further announcements or introductions? Seeing none, members, please return to your desks. We will proceed to our next order of business, third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to House Bill 1122.
House Bill 1122, Representative Kagan, also Senator Newell, concerning provisions to keep legal marijuana from underage persons.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1122 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the passage of House Bill 1122 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives McNulty, Swam, Szabo, and Waller. Close the machine. With 63 aye votes, 0 no votes, 2 excused, and 0 absent, House Bill 1122 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to House Bill 1007.
House Bill 1007, Representative Hamner, Senator Crowder, concerning the authority of county governments to limit certain forms of fire in connection with permitting county governments to restrict agricultural burning during periods of high fire danger to prohibit fireworks activity during the summer season.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1007 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the passage of House Bill 1007 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Vigil and Young. Close the machine. With 36 aye votes, 27 no votes, 2 excused, and 0 absent, House Bill 1007 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. We will proceed to our next order of business, general order, second reading of bills. Mr. Assistant Majority Leader. Seeing no objection, the House was. Seeing no real objection, the House will resolve itself in the committee of the whole for consideration of general orders. Representative Pabon will take the chair.
Will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for a reading of bill at length. Committee amendments will not be read unless requested, as they are printed in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and on your iPads and not read unless requested. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the Majority Leader. The Colt rule is relaxed. Mr. Kohler, will you please read the title of Senate Bill 19?
Senate Bill 19 by Senator Stedman, also Representatives Moreno and Janal, concerning the state income tax filing status of two taxpayers who may illegally file a joint federal income tax return.
Representative Janal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 1419, 14-019. There is no committee report.
To the bill, Representative Janal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill is a logical cleanup bill. It's a taxpayer's bill. It makes people's lives easier. People like CPAs, accountants, tax preparers, lawyers.
Oh, no. Sorry.
Same-sex couples who got married in a state that federally recognizes same-sex marriage but reside or have moved to Colorado may now file their taxes jointly. Colorado does not recognize same-sex marriage. Colorado recognizes civil unions. Senate Bill 14-019 follows a federal policy change that allows same-sex couples to file their taxes jointly. In Colorado, I think you're all familiar with this form, Colorado income tax form. The state income tax, which is Form 104, is directly linked to the federal income tax, Form 1040. Line number 1 on this Colorado state income tax form says, enter federal taxable income from your federal income tax form 1040. And to that number, Colorado applies a series of its own subtractions and additions and deductions and credits. The state of Colorado has directly linked the federal return to its state return since the mid-1980s. This is a tax policy bill, and I ask for a yes vote.
Representative Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. It's a pleasure to bring before you Senate Bill 19. It's extremely appropriate that we're hearing this bill on second reading on Valentine's Day, because what more romantic gesture is there than asking someone to file a joint tax return with you? That would be the way to my heart, for sure. But members, this is really a simple bill that follows what we currently practice in our tax code in Colorado. And that's that our Colorado state income taxes follow our federal state income taxes. And before, when we passed the Civil Unions Act last year, we didn't have this problem because the federal government did not recognize valid marriages conducted in states where it's recognized between same-sex couples. That has changed. We have same-sex couples in Colorado who were legally married in states that recognize it, yet they still have to file separate state income tax returns, even though they may file joint federal tax returns. It's created a confusion and a situation that needs to be addressed, and with that, I ask for your support.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, we heard Senate Bill 19 in committee a week or so ago. And in that discussion, Department of Revenue came up and basically said that they are already doing this. They made a ruling after the Supreme Court case last fall to rectify the discrepancy. So in a sense, I'm kind of wondering why the real need for the bill. But this issue has come up in other states, and other states have offered solutions that still respect their state constitutions as well as the federal law. So with that, I would like to offer Amendment L004. And ask that it be properly displayed.
L004 has been moved and is properly displayed.
Thank you, Mr.
Representative
Chair.
Priola.
Members, this amendment is patterned off of the Wisconsin solution on how they balanced between the state constitution and the federal ruling. I think it is fair, it respects the voters, and it treats the taxpayers of the state of Colorado in a fair and equitable manner. I would simply ask for a yes vote, and that we remember that we came down here to respect and uphold not only the federal but also the state constitution.
Representative Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I asked for a no vote on this amendment. This amendment was offered in committee and was voted down. The reality is that this amendment is a significant departure from current law and our current tax code and how we do things. The reality is that same-sex couples share their income and share their expenses just like every other couple. And this amendment requires same-sex couples to circumvent the process that we've already established in Colorado, our long accepted tax practices as they are today. Same-sex couples both share their income and their expenses, and so why not let them file jointly? Why not treat them like any other couple? I ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Janal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too ask for no vote on this amendment. According to the Wisconsin approach, as far as instructing same-sex taxpayers to allocate income to two single returns, not just one, using a state-provided schedule, it's not equal. It may cost us more money. We're not violating the state's constitution. We're not violating the definition of marriage according to state law, because this bill only applies to people who have same-sex couples who have been married in other states that are federally recognized for same-sex marriages, like New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, a lot of 17 other states. So it applies to a subset of people here in Colorado who have been married legally, recognized federally, and reside here in Colorado and want to file their income tax jointly. I ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Representative McNulty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representatives Moreno and Janal, characterizing this as a simple tax policy change. And Representative Priola's amendment is along those same lines. What we have here is not unlike another issue that we're dealing with related to marijuana. We have federal law that's in conflict with state law. We have to harmonize the federal government's actions with our state constitution now that legalizes marijuana. And similarly, we have a situation where the federal government has decided to do something that is in direct conflict with our state constitution. And so the question before us ought to be, how do we harmonize what the federal government is doing and the consequences of that federal action here related to tax returns and our state constitution, which is clear in its definition? How do we harmonize those 2 points? And Representative Priola's amendment allows us to harmonize those 2 points so that this body is not passing a bill that is patently unconstitutional, but passes a bill that attempts to harmonize the conflict that now exists because of what the Obama administration has done and what our state constitution says, to harmonize those two conflicting the federal provision and our state constitution. So I hope that you support the Priola amendment. I hope that we pass the Priola amendment and harmonize these two provisions in a way that doesn't force this body to vote on a bill that is unconstitutional. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment 004? Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, members, I appreciate the sponsors of this bill bringing it because of the discussion that needs to be had. As Representative McNulty pointed out, we have these issues of what the federal government is doing with respect to a matter and how we must do our best as a state with purview over those same matters to try to harmonize it. Now, members, I hear from time to time here and over that we need to respect the will of our citizens as they have placed things in our Constitution. And our Constitution currently says that marriage is only between a man and a woman. That civil unions, which this legislature passed last year, is a different legal relationship. That's no judgment whatsoever, not intended to be upon the loving relationship between two people. But the law represents and recognizes it as a different institution. In fact, when that debate took place, we heard that over and over again. Now, what is so interesting about this to me is that we have finally reached what has always been my difficulty with this, which is that we choose particular statuses in the tax code and other places to deal with relationships. So you get deductions for your children and your stepchildren, various dependents. But the conflict here is this, that we have other states that have different views, as they are. And by the way, it is worth pointing out to all of you that the United States Supreme Court has always been very clear that notions of domestic relations and family law are first and foremost primarily a question for the states. So what this amendment does is try to recognize that. It does a good job of it. This is an accounting matter, frankly. And the bill has unduly complicated that accounting matter and frankly injected the debate one more time when this amendment solves that problem with a little bit of simple accounting. And for that reason, we need to get out of this debate. We need to get out of the debate, deal with the accounting, and that's what this amendment does. It is an elegant solution to the problem. Thank you, Representative Priola, and I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask Representative Gardner if our state constitution mandates unreasonable tax laws. It seems to me it's very inefficient and unfair for us who happen to be gay to have to be able to have these two separate inconvenient forms. I think it's just a matter of government efficiency and fairness. So I ask for a no vote on the amendment.
Speaker Ferrandino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I rise in opposition to this amendment. We've had a long history in our country of the concept of separate but equal. And the fight against that and arguing in our courts have struck down, after first ratifying separate but equal, then struck it down and said that's not the way we should go. We should actually have equality. There's no such thing as equality if it's separate. And what we're doing here is treating like couples differently, saying that if you are a same-sex couple who's married in another state, who under federal law can file jointly, you can be equal, but you got to be separate. You got to fill out another form, split your income into two separates or your individuals, and that is not the way we should move forward in this state. We are looking at, if you look at what's going on nationally, attitudes and opinions are changing in this area quicker than anything else, and building in to our tax code more discrimination and allowing the state to say, yes, well, maybe you're married in another state, but we're going to treat you separately. Maybe it's equal, and actually you could argue if it's actually even equal, but we're going to treat you differently than any other married couple from another state. That is not fair. That is not right. I ask for a no vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment 004? Representative Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I respectfully disagree. We are simply trying to harmonize a discrepancy between federal law and the state constitution. I think we all remember taking the oath when we were sworn in to uphold not only the federal but also the state constitution. I think this amendment does it in an elegant way and does not create any conflicts going forward. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I find that to be an interesting concept that, that this amendment is attempting to harmonize the federal law with the Constitution. We see that the federal law is striking down same-sex marriage bans throughout the nation, and there's something called supremacy. And I bet you anything the Supremacy Clause would probably find this one here to be discriminatory, probably strike it down as unconstitutional. This is not original, folks. I think that the Speaker has spoken to it, that the concept of separate but equal is not an original concept found in this amendment. It's something that our Supreme Court in our country has rejected over and over again, has rejected that kind of bias. And so I ask for a no vote on this amendment. Let's move forward in this country.
Representative Janal.
Again, I ask for a no vote on this amendment because this is an income tax policy bill, not a marriage bill. Please vote no.
Is there any further discussion on 004? Seeing none. All in favor of 004, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. No. The amendment is lost. Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 14019? Representative McNulty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, thank you for your consideration of the Priola Amendment. I'm sorry that it didn't pass. We had the opportunity to harmonize the inconsistent provisions with what the federal government is doing now and what our state constitution says. Colleagues, we can't simply ignore our state constitution. We can't simply ignore the fact that it says what it says, that marriage is between one man and one woman. And while I know that some would prefer to simply ignore that provision, we can't. It says what it says, and it is our state constitution. Much in the same way that I am radically opposed to the legalization of marijuana in this state, I can't ignore the fact that marijuana is now legal. And so I voted for Representative Kagan's bill this morning that put sideboards on the legal sale of marijuana. I didn't like it. I didn't like the fact that we had to pass that bill, but in line with our state constitution, we had to. Representative Salazar, this is not a supremacy issue. The federal government has never delved. The Supreme Court has not delved, and in fact, the most recent case in front of the Supreme Court reaffirmed the right, the ability, and the notion that states control these types of matters. This is a simple tax code issue. I agree with Representatives Moreno and Janal that this is simply a tax code issue. We need to do it the right way, and we need to do it in a way, we need to deal with the federal issue, and we need to deal with it in a way that is not in conflict with our state constitution. Without the Priola Amendment, I ask for a no vote on Senate Bill 19.
Representative Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, the last I looked, our state constitution does not mandate unreasonable tax laws. This makes no sense. Colorado's income tax laws are linked with the federal tax code. So a joint return of the federal form should be aligned to a joint return on the state form. Let's vote for government efficiency, for consumer efficiency, and fairness. And I ask for your support on Senate Bill 19.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 14019? Seeing none, all in favor of Senate Bill 14019, please say aye. Aye! All opposed, no? No! The Senate bill passes. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 14180.
House Bill 1080 by Representatives McLaughlin and Quorum, also Senator Roberts, concerning a sales and use tax exemption for the Colorado Ute Indians.
Representative McLaughlin.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I spoke to the majority leader about this, and we asked that Representative Quorum and I, excuse me.
Yeah, you can't. You have to articulate.
Madam Majority Leader. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1080 and House Bill 1040 to the end of the calendar.
Seeing no objection, House Bill 1080 will be laid over to the end of the calendar. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1117.
House Bill 1117 by Representative Schaefer, also Senator Roberts, concerning the creation of the Colorado Premature Birth Commission.
Representative Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1117, and I move Amendment L006. If it could be properly displayed, please.
The amendment is received and properly displayed. Please proceed to Amendment 006.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, L006 reduces the number of laypersons on this Colorado Premature Birth Commission from 12 to 9, and it adds 4 legislators to this commission. It makes good sense for a commission to have some legislators, since this will, I hope, pass. And the amendment was brought to me. I thought it was a very reasonable amendment, and I ask for your support of L006.
Representative Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I ask for your support on Amendment L006. Representative Schaefer and I have spent quite a bit of time working on this issue, and we both felt that it was appropriate to have some sideboards as far as guidance and representation from both chambers, both parties, with no compensation. So with that, I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment 006? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment 006. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The amendment passes. Representative Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this bill came out of the Health, Insurance, and Environment Committee on a strong vote. The bill will create a 1-year commission to study ways of preventing premature births, which in Colorado represent about 10% of all births, or 7,000 births. You may or may not know that such premature births cost $55,000 compared to a full-term birth of $4,000. Employers and insurance companies pay 12 times as much in health care costs for premature low birth weight births than for full-term births. There's also, members, an extreme fear and anxiety for parents who don't know if their baby will live if it is a premature baby. These premature births occur before 39 weeks of gestation and are often the cause of infant death in the first month. Birth defects such as blindness, cerebral palsy, respiratory illnesses, and learning disabilities throughout a child's life. So this Premature Birth Commission, as amended, will consist of 4 legislators and 9 experts from public health, hospitals, physicians, university researchers, and parents directly affected by a premature birth. Members will come from a broad geographic and racial ethnic area, and the Commission will report its recommendations to the Department of Public Health and Environment by December 1st of 2014. There will be no cost for the members appointed to this commission. So with that, I ask for your support of 1117 as amended.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1117? Humphrey, sorry. Representative Humphrey.
I just helped him out a little bit. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the effort to reduce premature births. I move L007, request that it be displayed.
The amendment?
And from what I understand, this is the...
displayed.
Thank you. This is the intent already of the groups involved, but I just would like to specify that the recommendations may not include abortion counseling or surgical abortions as ways to reduce premature births.
Representative Schaefer.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I did not see this amendment in advance. There has never been any intention for this bill to address abortion or counseling of that matter. This is about how all pregnancies that men and women have a very strong chance of becoming healthy pregnancies through good prenatal care for the father and the mother, for good nutrition, for education and health care. So this has never been part of the Commission's focus or of the March of Times that has made it their priority for years and years. After they eliminated polio, they are working now to eliminate premature birth. So I appreciate the conversation, Representative Humphrey, but I ask for a no vote on the amendment.
Representative Sain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand what the intent of the bill is. I think this is harmonious with that intent, and so if it's premature birth counseling with intent for healthy babies, this really falls right into line with that. I think it just helps clarify, and it would make the bill a better bill. Ask for a yes vote. Thank you.
Representative Schaefer.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask for a no vote on the amendment. I don't want to complicate the mission of what is a winnable battle in Colorado to reduce premature births. I don't want to complicate it with this amendment. This was never brought up in committee. This has not been brought up to me before I saw this amendment, so I ask for a no vote.
Representative Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate Representative Schaefer running this legislation. As a co-sponsor of the legislation, I am confident that this will not be an issue that arises on the Commission, and that is my basis for being a co-sponsor on the legislation, is this will not be an issue that is ever discussed by the Commission. I appreciate what March of Dimes does for our communities, for our state, and I support this bill amended or unamended.
Representative Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I think this amendment actually clarifies and doesn't muddy the water, but clarifies what the Commission will do. In a sense, will put the bill in a better position to remove any doubt of what could possibly come up during the Commission. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment 007? Representative Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask for a no vote.
Seeing no further discussion on the amendment, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment 007 to House Bill 1117. All in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no? No. The amendment fails. To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1117 and ask for your support. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1117? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1117. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. House Bill 1117 passes. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1040. Pardon me, please read the title of House Bill 1060.
House Bill 1060 by Representative Mitch Bush, also Senator Schwartz, concerning the authority of a municipality to compensate members of a municipal planning commission.
Representative Mitch Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1060. There is no committee report.
To the bill, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill pertains only to statutory municipalities. Unlike home rule municipalities, statutory municipalities are currently prevented in statute from offering compensation. A number of statutory municipalities, one in particular in my district, were very concerned about this because of the loads that their planning commissioners have with large development projects. The amount of time, the amount of effort, the time away from one's business, the time away from one's family, the time away from one's job. As it stands now, these statutory municipalities cannot compensate. Let me define compensate a bit, because in the committee there was a good deal of discussion about that. By compensate, we are not suggesting a salary for planning commissioners. Let me instead tell you what they do in home rule towns which are allowed to do this. They give gift certificates at Christmas. They give a ski pass to Vail. They give $25 per meeting, 2 meetings a month. In other municipalities that are home rule, not statutory, Cortez is one. They give $25 a meeting. Ridgeway gives $100 a month. And Lakewood gives $50 every other week. This is not a salary, it is a token of appreciation. It has been requested by a town in my district because they really do need to be able to attract and especially retain their planning commissioners. And we also need to have diversity on planning commissions because those who are currently on the planning commissions do indeed represent a wide variety of business people and occupations. I would urge a yes vote. Thank you.
Representative Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Mitch Bush, I appreciate you bringing this legislation. I have a few questions on it. One, in your briefing that you just gave, you talked about they could give a ski pass, they could give a gift certificate. Is that the definition of compensation the way you understand it and the way Colorado statute understands it? Because my understanding is while it's not a salary, this is true, compensation is for out-of-pocket losses. So if you travel to, there's some mileage costs, some gasoline costs. You may buy a meal or something, and instead of them wanting to go through a reimbursement process where you fill out a sheet and turn it in for reimbursement, which is a hassle, we've all had to do that before, this just allows for a lump sum to be given on a stipend type of basis. And I understand that, but I don't understand it to be an appreciative gift. That's a little different. So I want to see if we're actually defining out compensation in some way, or if it has been in Colorado statute.
Representative Mitch Bush.
Thank you, Representative Dorr. And in committee, where this went out 10-3, this was an issue that we did talk about. Compensation is what's in current statute. The only thing this bill changes is the clause after compensation, and so it says, unless otherwise provided by ordinance. That's the only portion of the bill. With direct response to your question, the home rule municipalities appear to look at compensation as this small token, and I realize the problem that you're raising.
Representative Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm trying to figure out if there actually is the problem there. I mean, because if the home rule or municipality can already give these type of what you call gifts, certificates, and then want to say their compensation out, do we really need to create a Colorado statute that does it without defining what compensation is? Because otherwise we're saying compensation, now you back home to figure out what that is. I'm not sure if that's the kind of guidance we need to be giving as a state, where maybe it's more of either we're going to define compensation that it is for for activities such as out-of-pocket losses incurred in relation to your service as the planning commissioner, or something a little more defined, because I'm a little hesitant supporting an idea that just goes out and then doesn't have any kind of definition in it, because then it becomes Denver's definition, it becomes Aurora's definition, it becomes your little communities up that I know you represent up in the northwestern part of Colorado's definition. And then we're back here next year trying to define what compensation meant because somebody went overboard and all of a sudden it became a cruise.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1060? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1060. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. House Bill 1060 passes. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1166.
House Bill 1166, by Representative Vigil, Austin Center Talk Trop, concerning the renewal of concealed handgun permits by Colorado County Sheriffs.
Representative Vigil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the House Bill 1166, and there is no committee report.
To the bill, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Under current law, a person who possesses a concealed handgun permit or temporary emergency concealed permit must renew the permit with a county sheriff who originally issued it. And so that means that, like, if I had in my county, Castilla County issued me a permit, and then I go to Alamosa County for some reason, and I want to have that permit follow me, I have to go through the whole process again. And so what this bill does, it just makes it easier for me to be able to go to the Alamosa sheriff, pay my $13 for a background check, check with the sheriff, checking with the sheriff, make sure I'm all current and I don't have any violations of the law. And the sheriff there could issue me a concealed weapons permit. So it's really a modernization of the concealed handgun permit. There is no fiscal impact to the state government. There might be a minimal impact to the county themselves, but this was brought to me by the county sheriffs of Colorado. They support it. It came out of committee with a bipartisan support and unanimous vote, and I ask for your support on this with a yes vote.
Representative Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I rise in support of 1166. I want to thank Representative Vigil for bringing the bill. This is common sense, good legislation. If a person moves from one county to another in Colorado, there's no reason that that person should have to go back to their prior sheriff to renew their concealed carry permit. Representative Vigil, thanks for bringing the bill. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1166? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1166. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. House Bill 1166 passes. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1169.
House Bill 1169 by Representatives Dora and Garcia, Austin Center Talk Trop, concerning the repeal of Volunteer Firefighter Advisory Committee.
Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I move House Bill 1169. There is no committee report.
To the bill, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, House Bill 1169 is a recommendation from DORA on the 2013 Sunset Review for Volunteer Firefighters Advisory Committee. The committee has, this bill repeals the recommendations and asks for the committee to no longer exist, as the committee has accomplished its work and there's no other work before the committee.
Representative Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I asked for a yes vote on HB 1169. We're actually getting rid of some government here. We don't do that very often down here. It's a good act. We should do more of it. I ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1169? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1169. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. House Bill 1169 passes. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1055.
House Bill 1055 by Representative Holbert, concerning the issuance of special license plates to members of legislative bodies.
Representative Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1055 and the committee report from Transportation and Energy.
Representative to the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the committee, amendment was adopted to create a fix. My intention with the bill was to repeal. I ask for no vote on the committee report.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Representative Everett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also rise in opposition to the committee report. I did vote no, and I would like to repeal the license plates as well. I think that this will restore the public trust in the legislators and not show that we have any special treatment. So I urge a no vote on the committee report.
Representative Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee report on this bill fixes the bill to add accountability. All right, came through Transportation Committee, and some of the issues that we hear about there are about accountability. So what we're doing with the committee report is we're putting an S in front of the number or an H in front of the number. I get Senator Marble's bills from E470 all the time because they can't tell the difference between Senate 23 and House District 23. The other thing this bill now does with the committee report, if we pass the committee report, is that it will register the plate to you. We'll give you accountability. They can find you every time. Now, we heard in committee from most people that have gotten tickets in different places. The E470 tickets go someplace, but this will make sure that we have accountability and we can be found by E470, the Denver police, or whoever wants to find us because we're registering the plate. So I would ask strongly and urge strongly for an aye on the committee report, which we put on there to fix the bill.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Representative Salazar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I just want to let you know, Mr. Chair, that you know who has a license plate on his really big truck? Our Adams County Commissioner, Chaz Tedesco, who happens to be in this chamber. How you doing, Chaz? You like your license plate on your truck? Nice to see you.
It's close, Representative Salazar, very close. Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Transportation and Energy Committee report. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The committee report passes. Representative Holbert to the bill. Is it Representative Peniston?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And colleagues, we heard this bill in Transportation Committee, and the way this bill is now with the committee report provides a beautiful balance between being able to maintain those license plates, which several of our committee members said really helps them in their district, and a balance between that and being sure that we can be recognized for legal purposes. So this is a great bill the way it stands right now. Please vote yes.
Representative Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I also would urge a yes vote. This brings accountability. And from what I heard from a number of legislators around, it provides definite accountability because constituents can find you in the grocery store, they can find you in the 7-Eleven, and they can have a good conversation with you. It's another communication method, just like a newsletter we send out, just like a town hall. It's another way of communicating with constituents. Please vote yes.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1055? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1055. As all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. House Bill 1055 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 14025.
Senate Bill 25 by Senator Hodge, also Representative Fisher, concerning grants for domestic wastewater treatment works for small communities.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over Senate Bill 25 to the end of the calendar.
Senate Bill 25 will be laid over on the motion of the Majority Leader. Seeing no objection. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1190.
House Bill 1190 by Representative Wright and also Senator King, concerning the factors that are used to determine the financial capacity to provide matching monies of a school district or board of cooperative services that apply for financial assistance under the Building Excellent Schools Today Act.
Representative Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1190, and there is no committee report.
To the bill, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this bill comes to you from the Audit Committee. In one of our audits last year, we discovered in the BEST program, which is our school construction program, that some of our smaller and poorer school districts weren't even applying for the grants that were available under the program, and we discovered they weren't applying because they didn't think they could have the matching funds. So after some discussion, we decided to run a bill that would add a couple of criteria to that grant process and would allow some of these districts to be able to get grants for rebuilding and or repairing their schools. So members, this is a good bill. I urge a yes vote. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1190? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1190. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. House Bill 1190 passes. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 004.
Senate Bill 4 by Senator Todd, also Representatives Wilson and May, concerning the role and mission of community colleges.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move Senate Bill 14004. There is no committee report.
To the bill, Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill we moved last year part of the way through the process as Senate Bill 13165, and over the course of the summer we got all of the groups together, all the stakeholders together. A lot of work was done over the summer. The Senate cleared this bill 34-0, and House Ed passed it with a major majority of 12-2. This bill will allow community colleges to grant four-year degrees as Bachelor of Applied Science in areas that four-year institutions choose not to offer degrees. It's important to note that this bill does not prohibit four-year institutions from offering the same degree programs as they choose in the future. In fact, Mesa has already chosen to offer such a degree in culinary arts that many of you got to see here on the House floor a little while back or at the Capitol. What talent and enthusiasm in this type of program. We need to bring this enthusiasm across the state. I urge an aye vote on Senate Bill 14004.
Representative May.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask the members for a simple aye vote. Thank you.
Representative Hamner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to come down to the well and offer my vote of support for this bill and to thank the sponsors and the Senate sponsor for working so hard with all of the interest groups to pull together a bill that has so much support. As you know, I have a keen interest in Western State Colorado University, and they were opposed to the bill as presented last year. This year they are on board. The bill as written this year allows Western State to offer remedial courses and provide that kind of support for Chaffee and Gunnison counties. I really commend the bill sponsors and hope that you'll support the bill. Thank you.
Representative Mitz Bush.
I rise in strong support of this bill. It will be especially useful for rural Colorado and in my district for CMC and for CNCC, and really getting that direct link between students, employers, and jobs. So thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1132? Representative Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in strong support of this bill. It's a great bill for rural Colorado, western Colorado. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1132. All those in favor, of 004. Senate Bill 004. All in favor of Senate Bill 004, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Senate Bill 004 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1132.
House Bill 1132 by Representative Duran, also Senator Stedman, concerning the ability of a local government to establish the hours during which alcohol beverages may be sold for consumption on a licensed premises.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1132 and the committee report.
To the committee report, Representative Duran.
All right. Mr. Chair, I do have an amendment, L008, and this is to the committee report.
Will you please move your amendment, Representative Duran?
I move L008.
Would you like it to be displayed, Representative Duran?
Yes, please. Please have it displayed.
L008 is a multi-page amendment, members. It has been placed on your desk at February 11th at 9 a.m. Representative Duran, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So what this amendment does is it clarifies a couple of different things on the bill as it came out of committee. The first thing that it clarifies is just making sure that all of local government's rights prior to 2 a.m. are preserved. And local governments have a lot of rights when it comes to a variety of different issues for liquor licenses, particularly when there's bad actors involved. And so it just makes sure that all of that is preserved prior to 2 a.m. Then the other piece of it is just a simple reporting requirement so that if any local government does make a change, that they report it to the state. And then the third part is a safety clause. So I ask your support for L008.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I move L013, which is an amendment to L008, and ask that it be displayed.
L013 has been moved and is properly displayed. To the amendment, Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, what L013 does is it says if a local municipality is going to vote to extend their hours, that it must apply uniformly through the entire jurisdiction. So that way they can't just pick and choose, well, I want the downtown folks to be able to stay open till 3, but all the rest of the bars and restaurants can't. And as we all know, if that were to happen, that would put the bars and restaurants that weren't in the jurisdiction that had the time changed at a competitive disadvantage. Think about a lot of times, I know a lot of folks like to go out. I've heard tell that some people do a lot of bar hopping. I don't know anything about that, but I've heard about it. But I've also heard that some people, when they go out, try to plan, I'm going to stay at one location for the entire evening. And if you're planning on making it a longer evening than maybe others, you might want to choose one that allows you to stay open later and not go to somewhere else. And so, as the bill is currently written with the underlying amendment, L008, would allow a municipality to pick and choose certain areas of their municipality where they could stay open later, which thus would put those businesses that are in that area at a competitive advantage. So L013 seeks to just level the playing field, still allows the municipality to vote if they want to extend the hours, but they must apply it uniformly. So I urge an aye vote on L013.
There's further discussion on Amendment L013. Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do ask for a no vote on this amendment, and let me tell you why. The reason is that, going back to the initial amendment, L008, we've had a good group of stakeholders, including the Colorado Restaurant Association, that supports L008. So this amendment is actually going to infringe upon local control. And the reason why is that we really want to be able to make sure that if we're giving more local control, that throughout that process that they can really distinguish between different neighborhoods, different areas, depending on particular needs of the community. If this amendment were to go on and the bill ultimately passed and it is signed into law, then the entire city of Denver or the entire city of Thornton or the entire city of Colorado Springs would have to change hours uniformly. Now this is really problematic because some of the areas that affect downtown Denver don't necessarily affect the Lower Highlands or necessarily affect the Santa Fe Art District. And so that's why if we're going to give additional local control, we really need to make sure that that local control is valid and that local governments can make determinations based on neighborhoods and so forth. Here's the other piece of this, is that I haven't heard from any of the stakeholders, and that includes the Restaurant Association, the Tavern League, the Colorado Municipal League, all of the different entities that are in favor of this bill asked for this amendment. And so while there's an argument that is being made that you want to be able to treat restaurants the same in an entire city, none of the entities that have been part of this or been part of the stakeholder group have requested this. And in fact, I think that this could truly be contrary to local control. And Mr. Chair, it is getting a little loud in here, so thank you.
Thank you, Representative Duran. Members, if I can have your attention, please. It is getting very loud in the chamber, and out of respect for the sponsor and those debating in the well, please try to keep your conversations to a minimum. Thank you. Is there further discussion in L 003 or 013? Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate you getting as much as you can the chamber quiet. I know that the chamber has so much difficulty hearing me when I'm down here that it is a challenge for me to speak loudly enough. So let me speak a little louder. If I hear local control tossed about down here in the well, sort of as the mantra of everything, I really, for the people of Colorado, I want you to know I may gag. It's not the panacea that covers everything. Local control is important, and I have been as big a supporter of local control as anyone in this chamber. But there are matters of statewide concern, and we declare them so, and we pass laws for the entire state. And one of those matters that we have determined to be a matter of statewide concern is the opening and closing of establishments that serve alcohol. Now, Mr. Chair, if you're wondering, this is on the amendment, not the bill, but they're sort of inseparable. The fact is that this bill starts down the road to give complete and near unbridled control to localities to set hours for restaurants and bars to serve alcohol. And that's a really, I think it's well-intentioned, Representative. I understand that your intentions are very good, but I have to tell you, there was a reason that we decided that local control and complete local control over that issue was not a good idea. At a time when we were more inclined to grant local control than we are perhaps today, we decided that wasn't a very good idea. And now this amendment has to be brought on the bill because of tinkering. And it's a very good amendment. And here's the tinkering. We don't really think it's a good idea to tell bars and restaurants that they can't, that cities or cities and counties can set any hours they want. So we say you can do your hours later. Well, here's the can of worms you open there. The municipalities almost immediately see that if you have to stay open till 2, but you could stay open till 4 or 4:30 or whatever, then they then immediately see, and I think they are correct in their interpretation, that they can set some zones for opening and closing in their incorporated areas. Well, how does that work? Well, I can see where in my own community, the downtown area may be able to leave their bars open till 3 o'clock or 3:30. But if you're 2 blocks away or 3 blocks away, you have to close at 2. Really? I'll invoke a few more phrases that everybody throws around down here in the well. We'll be picking winners and losers. We'll be allowing communities to pick winners and losers if we do that. There's a catchphrase for all of these things around policy, members. Local control, picking winners and losers. What this amendment does is say, communities, you can choose a time. You can choose a time for closing, but you don't get to pick winners and losers. Now, I understand, well, I don't understand. I started to say I understand the public safety argument around this, but I never have understood it. I've not understood how letting a bar stay open till 3 is going to improve the behavior of those who are inebriated when they hit the street. I don't get that. And I don't understand how if you go to your favorite bar and it closes at 2 and you hit the street inebriated at 2 and you find your car and you drive yourself to your second most favorite bar that stays open till 3:30, how that bit of local control improves public safety, which is a matter of statewide concern. And I don't understand how in my own sort of community where someone who is at a bar up in Ute Pass that closes at 2, driving down through Ute Pass to get to someplace in Manitou, Colorado Springs, or unincorporated El Paso County to a bar that might open later is going to be a contributor to public safety. So, at the very least, what we ought to do is adopt this amendment and say, cities, if you think Pass 2 is good, then Pass 2 is good for everybody. And minimize the cross traffic and leaving one bar and going to another, and the economic picking and choosing amongst two. I mean, after all, what you've done here is said, well, if your bar is where people want to stay a lot longer, you can stay open a lot longer. And if your bar is one that people might, you know, leave and go home because they don't stay there all night, well, we're going to punish you by making sure you close at 2. Really? I think all the amending around this bill, Representative, with all respect, is because the bill doesn't do what it needs to do. But I ask for an aye vote to this amendment to ensure that we don't punish people for actually running responsible bars and reward those who run bars that have become part of the pub crawl that somehow people want to take care of in one location in this state. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L013? Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just asked for a no vote on this amendment. And the reason why I asked for a no vote for this amendment is because when it comes to these type of issues, instead of putting an amendment into state statute, these decisions should be decided by the local government, by the city that has the different restaurants and establishments in their particular area. And so I don't want to think that here at the state level that we know more than what the local government does. I think the local government is in a much better position to evaluate all of the concerns that have been raised and make that decision ultimately. And so instead of having this be a statewide requirement and put that in statute, let's give that decision to the local government.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L013? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L013. Division has been called. As we find the members, is there any further discussion on L013? All those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please be seated. All those in favor of L013, please stand and remain standing in one place until the count is taken. More than 33 have been counted. Amendment L013 passes. To Amendment L008, Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to introduce Amendment L012. I move L012. It's an amendment to Representative Duran's amendment. Yes.
L012 has been moved and is properly displayed. Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Similar to Representative Del Grosso, I have concerns about this bill. I decided to address it in a different way. The idea of the bill of Representative Duran's bill is to allow local governments to allow bars to open anytime between 2 and 4:30. My amendment allows those local governments to decide to choose between the hours of 1 and 4:30. The reason I'm doing this is because it allows for local, greater government control and allows each community to decide for itself whether to decide what that closing time is. So instead of choosing times just between 2 and 4:30, that local government could choose between 1 and 4:30.
Members, again, it's getting loud in here, so let's be respectful for the debate and discussion on L012. Is there any further discussion on Amendment L012? Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of my concerns with the bill that Representative Duran is running is that it only allows bars and local governments to allow bars to stay open later. The later bars stay open, the more drinking that happens, the more likelihood there is to have accidents and DUIs, assaults, and neighborhood impacts. It might be right in one community if they're going to stagger times, if they are going to try and address issues of assault, crime at bar closings, to have that happen at 1 a.m. or 1:30. So that's why I am introducing L012, and I ask for an aye vote.
Representative McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would also urge an aye vote on this amendment. It really actually increases local government control because they would be able to decide that bars and restaurants that serve alcohol could close earlier, actually, than 2 a.m. So it contributes to the idea of local governments being able to decide what is most appropriate for their local jurisdiction. So I would urge an aye vote on this amendment.
Is there further discussion on Representative Schaefer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I ask for a yes vote on this amendment. I understand the problems that come from downtown and Lodo, but out in the suburbs and the whole regions of the state, I think it makes more sense to let the local government decide the hours. 1 o'clock a.m. to 4:30 a.m. We all support local control, don't we? So I think this is a reasonable solution to this issue of a lot of drinking that's going on and causing accidents. I come from a long line of alcoholics that have, almost ruined my family. And I just think this is a possibly good solution that covers the whole state, not just one area.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I stand in support of this amendment as well. If you're going to allow local control of hours of operation of establishments that sell alcohol, I agree with Representative Gardner. There should be a statewide standard because of the fact that if you don't do that, you have people all over the board, and I think we decided a long time ago that while we supported local control of certain things, we reserve the right to set the statewide standard for hours. However, if we are going to introduce a bill that changes that statewide standard, that allows for local control in one direction to allow local control of how late you can go past 2 o'clock, I believe very strongly that local control should rule and that the local government should decide if they want to close their liquor establishments earlier. I don't see the logic at all of just allowing this to go one way. So I support this amendment. I hope you vote yes.
Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I stand in support of the bill, but I do not support this amendment. And the reason why is because there are a number of small, bars are small businesses on the whole. And so what happens is when, let's just say somebody purchases a bar or has a bar, they have a certain business model. And in that business model, they may already have planned on the bar already closing at 2 a.m. And so what this is doing is taking time away from that bar owner, especially if, let's just say, their neighborhood is next to other bars that may be open later. So my concern is that it's now infringing on the rights of bar owners and could affect their revenues. So I ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Representative May.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I rise in opposition to this amendment. This is the problem that I have with this amendment, is that currently I've invested hard blood, sweat, and tears into my business. And I was operating under the assumption that I could stay open till 2 o'clock in the morning. And now you're putting my business at risk. This amendment does not allow for grandfathering. It makes it so that you're putting businesses out, you have the potential to put people out of business. And that's not what I came here for. So I strongly encourage a no vote on this. I think it's going in the wrong direction. I support local control, but I also believe in my right to choose. And I don't understand why we would be limiting what we've already are going forward on. So please, I've asked for a no vote.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I also asked for a no vote. And the reason why I asked for a no vote is that we've had conversations about this, and the problem with this is that there are thousands of businesses that operate in the state of Colorado that work hard and play by the rules. They're not bad actors. What you're going to be doing with this amendment is taking away some of their rights that they currently have. And so with that, I ask for a no vote.
Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For those communities where their neighborhoods, their bar owners, their residents say this is the right thing for our community, those communities should have the opportunity to allow that to happen. Currently, state law prohibits that, and Representative Duran's bill would prohibit communities from ever requiring a close before 2 a.m. There are reasons, unless they are pursued in an action for being a bad actor. The impact of keeping bars open later is that more drinking occurs. With more drinking, evidence shows that you have more DUIs, more crime, more neighborhood impacts. For neighborhoods and towns and cities that decide that they are okay with that, then fine, they can choose what they would like. For communities or towns that think that a 1 a.m. closing is more appropriate for them, I think that they should be able to choose that as well. Otherwise, we are going to have communities that are have residents driving all over the place to go to different closings in different communities, and that has major negative implications.
Is there Representative Duran?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to clarify one thing. As soon as we get back to the original amendment that I ran on the bill, L008, it does clarify that local government's rights currently under the law are preserved prior to 2 a.m. So there's not a restriction. So I just want to clarify that. And then regarding this topic, like I understand, some of where this is coming from, and the issue though is that by putting on this amendment, you're going to affect the existing licenses of thousands of businesses throughout the state of Colorado and take away their rights. We have laws on the books right now that deal with bad actors, to take away somebody's, license, suspend somebody's license, give them a fine if they are a bad actor. There's a lot of different things that local governments can do right now regarding some of these situations. This amendment, though, is going to take away take away some of the rights under existing licenses for thousands of businesses across the state of Colorado. I ask for your no vote.
Representative Becker.
Nothing, thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing in this bill takes anything away from anyone. It just gives local communities the authority to work within their local communities to figure out what the right closing time is. It broadens that range. So it doesn't require anything. It just increases the range of opportunities that local governments have.
Representative Lepsock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Folks, I'm going to be a no on this amendment. I'm going to stand up for my local small businesses in my district and be a no on this amendment and look forward to looking at L008. Please vote no on this amendment.
Representative Corm.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm rising in support of this amendment. I think it's a good bill, a good amendment. I actually see this as a front range problem, because if you really look at the economy of Western Colorado, we run out of money by about 11 o'clock, so it shouldn't be a problem. So, but anyway, I think this is a great bill, and thank you very much.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L012? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L012. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The noes have it. L012 fails. Back to Amendment L008. Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to get back to L008. This was the initial amendment that I brought forward, and it does a couple things. It clarifies that local governments' rights that they currently have prior to 2 a.m. are preserved. So that's the first thing that is very important, I think, for everybody to understand. And then also just that there will be a reporting requirement. And so because this amendment has so much to do with a regular bill, I would love to go ahead and just say a couple of things about why this legislation is being brought forward. Excuse me. Having a little difficult time hearing here in the well. So one of the reasons why this bill was originally brought forward is it's an effort to give local governments more options to be able to work with, to deal with different situations that come up in their particular community. One example of that is what has happened in Lower Downtown for at least the last 10 years or so. We have had several instances cases of violence for at least the last 10 years, and it's all happened at closing time. Even the Denver Post recently reported over the summer months about a study that was done in lower downtown that states that people are more likely to be assaulted of a crime at closing time versus any other part of the city of Denver. Now, since this bill came forward, and really what we're trying to do ultimately is just give local governments some more options to work with. And so when we talk about those options, they can be options like staggered closing times. They could be options like if there's going to be extended hours, then an individual would have to be in the door by a certain time to avoid bar hopping. There would be options available that not necessarily they would have to go to 4:30 a.m. They could go to a much shorter period of time in which they would continue to serve alcohol, but then also have another period of time after that where there would be a cooling down period. So, for example, there was actually an individual who was...
Representative Duran, members, can you please keep your side conversations to a minimum so we can hear and have this discussion on Amendment L008? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so one of the things that was so interesting when we had testimony about this bill is we heard from cab drivers, we heard from residents, we heard from the Downtown Denver Partnership, we heard from a variety of different stakeholders that said that this would be a good idea because there would be some options that the city would be able to work with. So I ask for your support of this amendment. This amendment will preserve local government's control prior to the time of 2 a.m. and then we can get back to the bill and have lots of good conversations. So I ask for your support.
Representative Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move an amendment to the Duran floor, Amendment L015, and ask that it be displayed. It's an Amendment 2.
Amendment L015 has been moved and properly displayed to the amendment. Representative Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this amendment brings up an issue that we haven't spoken about too much yet. We spoke about it in committee a little bit, and that is the effect on public safety, the DUI increase, and if there is an increase when you increase bar hours. And I don't know the answer. And at committee, there wasn't an affirmative answer because nobody knows for sure. The question is, are we going to, in some way, increase the number of DUIs by adding 2.5 hours to the drinking times at our establishments? And the answer may very well be no. And what this amendment does is says, let's have the study real quick, though. Let's take a little bit of time off. We owe it to the public to make sure that we are not going to increase DUIs in a substantial way. Because at the end of the day, I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that in 2012, there was almost 10,000 DUI arrests. Just between December 6th and December 16th of 2013, there were 652 DUI arrests. Just New Year's weekend, not that long ago, really, there were 501 DUI arrests. And we can never have a premise in legislation saying, are we okay with a certain amount of arrests? Are we okay with a certain amount, maybe increase of, God forbid, deaths? And how many are okay? Is it the mom that has to get up early to go to work? Is it the dad that's running out to get diapers for their kid in the middle of the night? Are they okay? And that's part of, we need to have the study to do this. We heard in committee that this was Denver requesting this. But we also, was interesting who we didn't hear from. There were no members of Denver City Council coming forward. There was a prior member, Ramona Martinez, to Denver City Council, and she said, we don't need this law. If Denver wants to deal with the violence on the streets when the bar is empty, they can do it. They can do it through licensing. They can do it through other measures. DPD, Denver Police Department, could put more officers on the street. She said, we don't need this. We didn't hear from Denver Police. The chief did not show up. Officers did not show up. We didn't hear, really, frankly, from too many concerned citizens, except a very small group, many of them bar owners, that want to have longer time to serve alcohol and get profits. And that's fine. That's a business decision. But we also have to weigh the public safety decision down here. We're obligated to. My amendment doesn't strike the bill. My amendment just says we're going to take a little bit of time and have a study done by the interoperational group, Interagency Task Force for Drunk Driving. They do an annual report every year. We're just going to task them to study this as well. I think we owe it to our people. One of the people I have heard from in Denver is the Denver District Attorney, Mitch Morrissey. And he has said, and I quote, A bill such as HB 1132 that changes public policy and creates unintended consequences that could place innocent lives in harm's way and potentially increase late-night substantial abuse is in dire need of a proper research and analysis prior to consideration. I think we owe it to the public to do this, and I ask for a yes vote on this amendment.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L015? Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, members, I have actually attended the Interagency Task Force on Drunk Driving meetings on and off for about 5 years, well before I was a member of this august body. And I know that this Interagency Task Force does a great job. They look at all angles of the issues because they have members of our community on all sides of the issue. Not only are members of MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, have a seat at the table, but also we have the judicial system, including DAs, defense attorneys, and judges. We have law enforcement, including police chiefs, sheriffs. We have also the beverage industry and the service industry that sit around the table. Those of you that may recall, I've carried bills the last 2 sessions that have arisen from the task force. And they do their homework. They have a wide-ranging group of people that study these issues in depth. And so, Representative Dorr, I'm supporting this amendment. I appreciate you bringing it forward. I actually put in a call to Chief Ticer, the police chief of Avon, who is the chair of the Interagency Task Force on Drunk Driving, to find out if the task force has had a chance to actually consider this bill, weigh in on it, and establish a position. And I have not heard back yet. My guess would be that they have not yet, because of the speed at which we move in the legislature is much quicker than what the task force can respond. So I think it's a good idea. I support it, and I urge members to support this amendment as well.
Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I do urge a yes vote on this. If we are trying to affect public policy, we should have some kind of management tool to measure that. If you can imagine, if you will, just in case it hits the news that somebody was served at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. and then hits someone else and is killed or kills others, anyone who votes for this bill may be responsible, or the public may hold them responsible. This is a good amendment, so let's just take a little bit of a 6-month break and make sure this is good policy. I really urge a yes vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask for your support.
Is there any further discussion of Amendment L015? Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think L015 is a good amendment that requires that we study what the impact of extended hours would be. We should do this actually before the bill ever goes into effect, and then consider whether this bill is a good idea or not. Still, so this should be the bill in itself. And not in an amendment to the bill. But regardless of that, I support the amendment and urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L015? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L015. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. L015 passes. Back to Amendment L008. Representative Duran.
I ask for your support of L008.
Representative? Okay. Is there any further discussion on Amendment L008? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L008. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. L008 passes. To the bill, Representative Duran.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, this has been a very interesting conversation. And just to make it a little bit more interesting, I'm going to go ahead and move my own amendment, L009, and would like to ask that it be displayed.
L009 has been moved. L009 is properly displayed to the amendment.
All right, so this amendment, and I think that this is actually makes even more sense when we talk about, you know, it was great to hear some folks today talk about the need for local control and so forth. And so what this amendment is going to do is that for a renewal of a license that authorizes a person to serve alcohol beverages for on-premises consumption and so forth, that the renewal, as a part of that, they can look at some of the situations that I think sometimes come up in neighborhoods, give neighborhoods more of a say to actually restrict hours as well upon renewal. So I'd ask for your support.
Is Representative Giroux?
This is to the amendment. I'm fine.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L009? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L009. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. L009 passes. To the bill, Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm also going to move L010. I move L010.
Amendment L010 has been moved and is properly displayed. Almost. Yes. Representative Duran.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And what this will do is give local governments more tools to work specifically with bad actors to restrict times of hours, operation of hours. I ask for your support.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L010? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L010. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. L010 passes. To the bill, Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, now we have a great bill that is going to make sure that we give more control to local governments across the state to look at when they are bad actors, to restrict hours upon renewal of licenses. We also have a bill that will give more options to local governments to extend hours as well. I ask for your support.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I'm not supporting the bill, just so you know. But I feel an obligation to come down here on behalf of all of those new fathers that may be driving out in the middle of the night to get diapers or formula, and all those mothers that have college students that, you know, you're not going to know where they are. But in a spirit with the bill, I move L011 and ask that it be displayed.
L011 has been moved.
Members,
and properly displayed to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, what this amendment does is I think it really comes to the point, to the crux of this bill. So I would ask for your support that if this bill passes, that we also make the following acts legal: running while in the possession of scissors, crossing the street without looking both ways, and lighting a match without first closing the matchbook. You know, as an architect, but more importantly, as someone that grew up in a ranching family in Colorado, there's certain things that you just don't do. Oh, did I say Colorado? Oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry, Dad, Mom, Wyoming. But there's certain things that you just don't do. And common sense is a really important thing. In fact, it's amazing that common sense will keep you alive. And I believe that all those emails I've been getting from the Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, they're right. Why do you want to put people at risk? Why do you want to expand something further than where it is right now? It just doesn't make sense to me. Personally, if I drink, I want to be in my jammas on the sofa with a good BBC movie or Jane Austen or something. I'm not really one of those that goes out to the bars at night. I really don't. And if you see me, that wasn't me, okay? But I asked for an aye vote on this amendment and a no vote on the bill.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment does not fit under the title.
We'll take a brief recess to determine whether the bill fits under the title. Chair has determined that the amendment does not fit under the title. To the bill, Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I urge a no vote on this bill. Although with particularly Representative Dorer's amendment, it makes it a little bit better. This bill is still a problem. It creates problems between communities when one community decides to stay open till 2 a.m. and another till 3 a.m. Several other states have considered this same law in the last 2 years. California rejected this law. Michigan rejected it. State of Washington rejected it. This bill has major unintended consequences, and the evidence shows that as bars stay open, you end up with more drunk driving, more crime, and more neighborhood impacts. It does not, and it doesn't, if we're going to do this, we need to give local governments more control. It does not give them the control that they need to solve the problems in their own community. This is a bill about a problem in one community that has implications for the entire state. So I urge a no vote.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, actually, now that we've added Amendment 9 and Amendment 10, that's actually not accurate. So we are giving local control in situations where a local licensing authority for a good cause may, as a condition of renewal of a license that authorizes a person to serve alcohol beverages for on-premises consumption, restrict the allowable hours during which the establishment may serve malt, vinous, and spirituous liquors. So we talked about this issue, and the way actually I initially introduced this bill was to give more local control prior to 2 a.m. and after 2 a.m. That was the whole premise as the bill was originally introduced. Now we have an amendment on there specific to renewal of licenses so that neighborhoods, and when we talk about pregnant mothers and husbands going out in the middle of the night to go buy milk and those types of things, this is actually even a better amendment to address some of those situations, because neighborhoods are going to have more of an influence for the renewal of licenses, so that all they have to do is have good cause to be able to restrict hours for needs of public safety. So let's say that you have a restaurant or an establishment that has never once had any sort of disciplinary action. When that restaurant or establishment goes up for a renewal of a license, at that point, the local government, if they have good reason to do so, are able to go ahead and restrict hours, which is exactly what some were proposing that we do here. So it does it for renewal of renewal of licenses. The other thing that it does is specific to issues of bad actors. So when there are bad actors, right now what happens sometimes in the state of Colorado, and particularly in Denver, is when there is an establishment that is a bad actor that has repeatedly violated their license, they actually have to, sometimes they will go through a proceeding in which there's an agreement that's made with the establishment and with the local government to go ahead and restrict hours. However, there's nothing in statute that clearly allows them to do that. So this gives even more local control in those situations where you have a bad actor that repeatedly violates the terms of their license. So I ask for your support of this legislation.
Representative Becker.
In 2008, 4 22-year-olds were in Lafayette, Colorado, went to a restaurant, had a great time, but it closed at 11 o'clock. So they drove from Lafayette to Boulder and went to a restaurant that stayed open till 2 a.m. When they drove back to Lafayette later that night, within an hour, three 22-year-olds were dead. We have to be concerned about drunk driving. The later places stay open, the more likely that is to happen. I appreciate Representative Duran's effort to be able to go after bad actors even more. But bad actors are not the problem here. First of all, it's incredibly difficult to go after bad actors. You can't tie, in most cases, individual behavior that happens outside a bar to what happened inside a bar 2 hours earlier. We are constantly trying to hold the restaurants responsible for individual actions and say, just go after the bad actors. So besides the difficulty in ever proving that, the restaurant may have never been at fault to begin with. So this amendment does not make this a good bill. I still urge a no vote on this.
Representative Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is a bill that hits pretty close to home. Growing up, I had a mother who was tenaciously against drunk driving because I had a father who participated in that behavior. I know the terror as a child of being in a car that's being operated by a drunk driver. I don't want more drunk driving. So I have debated with myself, I've gone back and forth, I've read the emails that have come in. What's the right decision on this bill? What's the best public policy? I think this is a fascinating bill because we do not see that typical dividing line down this center aisle with one party voting one way and the other party voting the other. We have a debate going on here that we should have more often. People on both sides coming together and wrestling with an idea and trying to figure out what's the best solution for Colorado. In my mind, the best solution in Colorado is to support House Bill 1132. Why? The phenomenon that I see, not in the community where I live, but the phenomenon that I see in Metro Denver, in Lodo, is that especially young people are congregating in bars and they're let out, rather like a Bronco game or other big sporting event lets out. We have a high concentration of people in a small area that are being let out, forced out at the same time to say, you have to leave now. So how do we address that? Because there seems to be a very high level of violence and drunk driving that occurs in these isolated areas. How do we address that here at the state capitol so that the entire population of Colorado is better served? The solution that I find, and Representative Duran, who I very rarely would come up and agree with, I admit that. We smile, we laugh about that. But thank God there are times where we come together across party lines and start sharing insight and perspective, not based on the R or D bar or name, but what we think is best for Colorado. And the solution here is the same solution that I support in K through 12 schools and so many other subjects in Colorado, and that's local control. If Parker or Lone Tree or any other community in Douglas County wants to address this problem in a different way because the problem is different in our community, then that's a good thing. And what I see in House Bill 1132 is the opportunity for communities that are experiencing this high concentration of this problem to deal with it in a way that works right for their communities. Now, I don't have experience, especially at my age, in driving around in lower downtown Denver at 2 a.m. on a weekend, Friday or Saturday night. I don't have personal experience. But I know from reading and watching reports that that's a problem. Can I come here and say that my community has the right solution for that community? No. And I think that what House Bill 1132 does is allow those communities, those jurisdictions, to handle this problem in a way that works best for their communities. And that is such a great quality of our state. It's in our Constitution that we have local control. So I think back to those terrifying moments of my childhood and teenage years. And I pray that my kids never experience that no one has to experience either end of what it's like to be in a vehicle operated by a drunk driver, especially for those that are killed and harmed by drunk drivers. But is the right solution to turn a blind eye to these problems that are existing because we have this deadline, this line in the sand that says you have to leave this establishment now and go out into public and be a greater threat? I think the better solution is to allow those establishments and their local governments to manage that problem, maybe stop serving alcohol at some designated time and then sell food and coffee or whatever it might be after that. But I think to oppose this bill, I think it stands in confrontation with local control. And I would ask all the members to please reconsider. If you're opposed to this bill, please rethink that. And let's stand together in what I believe to be the right solution. That's House Bill 1132. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1132? Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I rise in strong support of House Bill 1132. And there was some pretty strong and emotional testimony that that we've heard on how this might affect drunk driving. And in my estimation, my sense of it is that this would help alleviate that situation. Let's draw an analogy. If you have an event and you have lots of people in a room, and the event lets out, everybody is now heading towards the exit. Everybody is now heading towards the parking lot. Everybody is now heading home or heading to some other location, wherever they're going. And that's kind of the way it is now, especially in Denver. And I'm sorry, I'm a Denver representative, so forgive me for representing my city. But it could be the same anywhere, no matter where. It could be in Fort Collins or Pueblo or a small town. It doesn't matter. So what this is going to do or allow for, first of all, is local control, which I believe we need to support more of. So what it will allow us is some bars will close at 2 or 2:30, 3 o'clock. You'll also have people leaving at 2 or 2:30 or 3 o'clock or 3:30. And now, instead of a big jam of people hitting the streets all at the same time, all at one location, you're not going to have people at different times leaving in a more rational manner. It's better for law enforcement. It's better for cabs. Instead of people just standing out in the cold or what have you weather, waiting and waiting for a cab and saying, you know what, I'm just gonna get in my car or what have you. Now they're going to be able to say, look, you know what, now I can find a cab. It's going to be much easier. And so my sense of it is let's support this bill. It's better it's good public policy. It's pro-local control. It's good for businesses. It's good on the issue of drunk driving to make sure we're trying to curtail that. So I support this bill.
Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To address some of the reasons that Representative Rosenthal is supporting it, in fact, nothing in this bill requires staggering times. In fact, with the amendment that Representative Del Grosso passed, it prevents staggering times. So the reason he's supporting the bill doesn't actually exist. There are also all sorts of problems with staggering times if what's happening is staggering is between cities, because that means that people are getting in cars and driving to other cities where bars stay open late. So to the extent that you can get out of your and decide when you're, go from one place to the other because their times are staggered, that doesn't exist in this bill.
Representative Milton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I rise in strong support of House Bill 141132. We do have a problem when we allow when everyone gets out onto the streets at once after they've been drinking and after their emotions or just their energy is up and unfortunately want to cause some violence. This is a bill that would affect me personally because although I don't talk about this much, but many of you know that my wife was shot. She was a victim of gun violence when she was driving past the club, not even in the club, but driving past the club, and there was some gun violence outside. Two people were having an argument, and one started shooting, and a stray bullet went through her back window and hit her in the temple. That might not have happened had we had staggered times or had we had later hours where we weren't having everybody out on the street at once. And so, Representative Duran, I really appreciate you bringing this bill forward so that way we can hopefully mitigate some of the violence that's been happening in communities around Colorado by having so many people who have been intoxicated leaving bars all at once. So I show my support for 1132.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1132? Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members, for entertaining this debate. It has definitely been an interesting bill, getting perspectives from a variety of different ideas, and so I ask for your support. There is new local control measures in this legislation at this point. There's no doubt. Ask for your support.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1132? Seeing none, the question before. Division has been called.
Recess?
I can't recess in the middle. The question is the adoption of House Bill 1132. A division has been requested. All those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please be seated. All those in favor of House Bill 1132, please stand and remain standing in one place until the vote is taken. More than 33 have arisen. The bill passes. Mr. Kohler, would you please read the title of House Bill 1125?
House Bill 1125 by Representative Mitch Bush, also Senator Balmer, concerning the circumstances under which a unit owners association may disclose contact information from members and residents under the Colorado Common Interest Ownership Act.
Representative Mitch Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 14-1125. There is no committee report.
To the bill, Representative Mitch Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill was requested by HOAs in my district and also in the Front Range. The purpose of this bill is to clarify what has been confusing for some attorneys from the HOAs regarding House Bill 12-1237. In particular, this bill allows HOA members to exchange emails and phone numbers with written electronic permission. This bill did pass out of committee unanimously.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1125? Representative Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good bill. Vote yes.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1125? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1125. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. House Bill 1125 passes. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1183.
House Bill 1183 by Representative Fields, also Senator Jones, concerning the reinstatement of the authority for active military personnel to practice professionally.
Representative Fields. Madam Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I move House Bill 1183 and the Business, Labor, Economic, and Workforce Development Committee report.
To the Business, Labor, Economic, and Workforce Development report, Madam Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this committee report includes an amendment that clarifies the military personnel meet all requirements. I ask for an aye vote.
The question before us is the passage of the Business, Labor, Economic, and Workforce Development. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the committee report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The committee report passes. To the bill, Madam Speaker Pro Tem.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move Amendment L005 and ask that it be displayed.
You don't have it. I need a packet. Do you have more than one?
L005 has been moved.
We'll have to get a copy. How many do you want? 4.
And is properly displayed. To the amendment, Madam Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, member, what this amendment does, it just clarifies that we must include reservists and National Guardsmen as we consider House Bill 1183. It just creates more clarity. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L005? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L005. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? L005 passes. To the bill, Madam Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, basically, this is a bill to help our veterans. As you know, many of our veterans, you've all heard the story about what it's like to transition back to life after being deployed. Right now, DORA has permissive language that their licensures can be reinstated or waived. And basically what this does, it will say that we must. It requires DORA to have a performance requirement to consider the waiver. So I ask a yes vote on House Bill 1183. I think it sends a very clear message that the men and women serving our country values them through granting them this waiver. I ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Fields, I was reading through the bill and hearing some discussions as far as what I was taking that you're wanting to do the bill was if somebody was licensed in a certain profession before they were in the military or somehow, and then they went on active duty, then once they got off of active duty and left active duty, they would be able to apply again right away and then have their license reinstated. Is that what your impression that the bill does?
Madam Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, that's exactly what the intent of the bill does. Right now, DORA already has in place this fee waiver, and basically what we're doing is we're changing the language from may to shall.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So where I'm confused is and I fully agree that this is a good idea and we need to do that. But when I read that it talks about it will reinstate the certification of any active military personnel, so that means somebody that's still on active duty, we're going to reinstate them. So that isn't the veteran that actually left. And so we're going to reinstate that. So to me, it's not the way it's drafted, that doesn't help the person that just got off of active duty because it explicitly says any active military personnel. So I guess I'm trying to figure out how this bill does what you're intending to do, because I would love it to do what you're saying, but that's where maybe you can walk me through and tell me that's how this bill does what you want it to do.
Representative Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And basically, we received testimony from DORA. And what they do is when they consider the applications, they're looking at the definition of military personnel. And it does include reservists, it does include National Guard, and the amendment that I just add would include that information as well. So it just clarifies it even more. So the intent would be that active members of our military would be eligible for this waiver. I ask for an aye vote on House Bill 1183.
Representative Del Grosso, I believe. Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1183? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1183. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. House Bill 1183 passes. Mr. Kohler. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1108.
Seeing no objection, House Bill 1108 will be laid over until...
Oh, I have to move out of order to get Senate Bill 25 back up. It's laid over to the end of the calendar. Senate Bill 25 is what I want to do now, so I'll proceed out of order. Well, I'll just proceed out of order.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to proceed out of order to consider Senate Bill 25.
Seeing no objection, we'll proceed out of order to hear Senate Bill 25. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 25.
Senate Bill 25 by Senator Hodge, also Representative Fisher, concerning grants for domestic wastewater treatment works for small communities.
Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Senate Bill 25, and there is no committee report.
Proceed to the bill, Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 25 is a clarification of current statutes that establish the Small Communities Water and Wastewater Grant Fund in the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. And it was a bill that came through the Interim Water Resources Review Committee, passed out of the House Agriculture Committee, I believe, unanimously. It's a clarification to state explicitly that wastewater projects are eligible for grants from the fund, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 25? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 25. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Senate Bill 25 is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The committee shall rise and report.
The House will come back to order. Looking for anyone to fine. Anyone? No, this. Okay. I think the sergeants did a good job making sure you put your jackets on. Mr. Kohler, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Speaker, Committee of the Whole begs leave to report as under consideration the following attached bills being second reading thereof and makes the following recommendations. They're on House Bills 1055 amended, 1060, 1117 amended, 1125, 1132 amended, 1166, 1169, 1183 amended, 1190. Passed on second reading in order to gross place on the calendar for third and final passage. Senate Bills 4, 19, and 25. Passed on second reading in order revised and placed on the calendar for third and final passage.
You've heard the. Oh, actually, you haven't heard the motion. Representative Pabon, wherever you are. Now you've heard the motion. There are amendments at the desk. They're your well, one is your members. Mr. Kohler, please read the Holbert amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Representative Holbert moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in adopting the Transportation and Energy Committee report to House Bill 1055 dated February 6, 2014 to show that said report lost and that House Bill 1055 passed.
Representative Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the Holbert amendment to the Committee of the Whole report.
To the amendment, Representative Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment simply says the committee report did fail and the bill did pass. Ask for an aye vote.
Representative Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that passed, and the reason it passed is because the committee passed a very sensible approach for accountability and to make sure that we can communicate with our voters and our constituents out there. This provides the opportunity to be identified and to be accountable and to work with the people in our district. I urge a strong no vote on the Holbert amendment.
Representative Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I rise in support of the Holbert amendment to the Committee of the Whole report. The Tyler amendment is a good idea, but it should be a standalone bill. Let's restore the Holbert bill back to its original intent. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Corum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You're probably getting tired of hearing about rural western Colorado and our poor economy. Let me tell you, in southwest Colorado, their television is Albuquerque. They truly believe that Susana Martinez is the governor. And I'm kind of a fan of Susana Martinez, so I like that. But, you know, we're also, besides the television, the local newspapers 2 days a week. My district is about 7,700 square miles. Was there last week. It's a 1,000-mile trip for me to go into my district and come back by the time I leave on Friday and come back on Sundays. So many times while in that area, I'm driving down the road, I see somebody flash a light at me. Not always the red and the blues. That's a different story. We will talk about that. But they want to talk about it. They have a problem. So that is the easiest way to identify who their representative is because, you know, I live almost 200 miles from part of that district. So it's important to me, and I did support the ability to add the identification of whether it is a House or a Senate. District 58 doesn't seem to be a problem. I just paid a ticket a couple of weeks ago. My colleague, Mr. Representative Everett, got one the morning we had that in committee. So if Representative Pennison, if you're around, you know, $1 toward my ticket would also be appreciated. So, but I would ask you to vote no on this count. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before the House is the adoption of the Holbert amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Close the machine. With 27 aye votes, 36 no votes, 2 excused, and 0 absent, the Holbert amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole is lost. Mr. Kohler, please read. Let's see. Let's do the Becker amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole first.
Representative Becker moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Becker Amendment L012 to House Bill 1132 to show that said amendment passed, and that Duran Amendment L008 to House Bill 1132 passed, and that House Bill 1132 as amended passed.
Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the Becker Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Please proceed, and I'm the speaker, not the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
She's new. I'm going to give her a break. It's her first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask for an aye vote on Amendment L012 that I spoke of earlier. This amendment gives greater control to local governments to address any issues that may be in their jurisdictions regarding late night alcohol service. Folks, the evidence is clear. The later places stay open, the greater number of DUIs, the greater number of neighborhood impacts, and the greater number of crimes. This just puts one more tool that may not be used at all in the toolbox for local government to address those issues. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you again, members, for having such a long and vigorous debate about this. This would allow local governments to end closing time at 1 a.m. instead of 2 a.m. in current state law. Just so everybody knows, the Restaurant Association is against this amendment. There are existing licenses that this could potentially affect if a local government chose to take action and roll back times to 1 a.m. So vote your conscience.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before the House is the adoption of the Becker Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine. The members proceed to vote. Close the machine with 23 aye votes, 40 no votes, 2 excused, and 0 absent. The Becker Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole is lost. Mr. Kohler, please read the first Duran Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. The amendment print bell, page 2, after line 1. L009.
Representative Duran moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in adopting the following Duran Amendment L009 to House Bill 1132 to show that said amendment lost and that House Bill 1132 as amended passed.
Okay, and members,
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Could you move the amendment?
I move the amendment.
To the amendment, Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's been a long day. Okay, so what this amendment does, and this goes right to the heart of this debate on local control and whether or not we should be giving more local control for a restriction of hours. Just to state this from the beginning, I know that the Restaurant Association and the Tavern League, I believe, is against this amendment. So I want to make sure that that is clear to everybody. What this amendment does is it allows a local licensing authority for good cause to restrict the hours of operation. So prior to 2 a.m., if the local government thinks they have good cause to restrict hours of operation on a liquor license, then this would enable them to be able to do that.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question for the House is the adoption of the first Duran Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives McLaughlin and McNulty. Representative McNulty. Close the machine. With 5 aye votes, 58 no votes, 2 excused, shockingly, the Duran amendment fails. Mr. Kohler, please read the second Duran amendment to the Committee of the Whole report. This is the amendment to L10.
Representative Duran moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in adopting the following Duran Amendment L010 to House Bill 1132 to show that said amendment lost and that House Bill 1132 as amended passed.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, the reason why I'm having you vote on this is because I really think it is important to determine where people think local control needs to be and where it does not, because this conversation has been so much focused on that. And so what the amendment did that passed was that when a person licensed to serve alcoholic beverages for on-premises consumption, and when a licensee's agent, servant, or employees commits a violation of this article. So this is situations where there are bad actors. If there are bad actors, should in that situation the local government give the opportunity, should the local government restrict hours when there is an establishment that is a bad actor? So that is what this amendment does. So what, if you vote in favor of this amendment, then the amendment loses. If you vote against it, then it's the opposite.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Duran, I need a little bit of clarification here, because are we voting on amendments, or are we conducting a poll among the members of this body? Because I'm not sure if we are voting on an amendment or if we really are just conducting a personal poll for yourself. I'm not sure what we're doing here.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And there's no poll here. When these came up, there wasn't a lot of discussion, and I don't know if it was just because people were focused on other things or not, but they barely passed. And so what I would like to do is I would actually urge the committee to vote in favor of the amendment to show that the amendment lost. This is a conversation that we have been having around bad actors and so forth, and so I ask that you vote in favor of this. That's correct.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if the sponsor could, I'll wait until she's done talking. If the sponsor could explain to us what we're doing here, because I'm not quite sure while we're doing all of this, because it does feel like a poll. And when you first came up here with this amendment, you said you wanted to see where the House was on this, that you were trying to figure out.
Representative Giroux, can we go? This is.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I apologize. I just don't understand what we're doing. I don't understand what her intent is.
Representative Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So let me take another stab at this. This amendment went on. This amendment went on so that if there is a bad actor and they violate their terms of conditions in their liquor license, that if that happens, then the local government can restrict hours, and it clearly states that. So this amendment went on, and so now I am asking that we have a hard vote count on this, because people were not paying attention. There was not very many people that were listening to the conversation, and very few people actually voted. And so here is the situation with this. This is on right now. If you do not want this amendment to go on, then you would vote in favor of this. However, since I think that people are confused, I'm going to go ahead and withdraw this amendment.
There is Representative McNulty. Do you have?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the Duran Amendment, the second Duran Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
That is a proper motion. Representative McNulty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Representative Duran, I don't exactly know what happened on second reading that has caused you to come back on third reading to run Committee of the Whole amendments. And I know that this is an issue that is not partisan. There's a little bit of support and opposition on both sides. But if I read your second amendment correctly, it removes the amendment that you offered that would have eliminated the requirement that a liquor license be suspended if the outlet violates the provisions of its permit. Is that correct, Representative Duran? Representative Duran? Representative Bueller? Do you just want to put us in recess for a minute, Mr. Speaker?
The House will stand in a brief recess. The House will come back to order. Representative Duran? Representative McNulty, do you want to ask the question again?
It's the McNulty motion on the Duran amendment that's repealing Duran amendment that passed. So, Representative Duran, my question to you is this. Your initial amendment, L010, removed the requirement that if an establishment that serves alcohol, if they violate the conditions of their permit or violate state law, that their license shall be revoked or suspended, and created some level of flexibility that would allow the regulators to restrict their hours instead of revoking or suspending their license. Is that a correct explanation of L010?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And let me just clarify a couple things. And if I have not been clear, then my apologies. When I went out to talk with a couple people outside, there was some clear objection to some of the amendments that were put on. Okay, and so I wanted to make sure that people understood that there was clear objection to those amendments. Right now, there is objection to the amendment that was originally put on when it comes to bad actors. Some of the opposition to this amendment comes from the Restaurant Association. It also comes from the Tavern League. Those are the two that I know of right now. What this amendment does, and the amendment as it was passed, is that if there is a bad actor, that the local government could restrict their hours of operation. And so in an effort to continue to communicate with all of you about where stakeholders are on this issue, I wanted to let you know that that is what came out of that. So with this, this would reverse the action that was taken before by putting this on the bill. So I ask for a no vote.
Okay.
Hold. Representative McNulty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Duran, I accept your apology. I don't know that it's more clear, but I think that I have an idea of what is going on with this amendment, and so I do ask for an aye vote on the repeal of Duran's L010.
Representative Duran.
And Representative McNulty, I would ask that you withdraw the motion. I mean, what? Yeah, I mean,
Why?
and if you want, that's fine if you don't want to. But okay.
The House is going to stand in recess. The House will come back to order. Representative McNulty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under Robert's Rules of Order, page 13,
Representative McNulty, we do not follow Robert's Rules of Orders, as you know, former Speaker McNulty.
Well, that's not true. Where the rules are silent, we do follow Robert's
No,
rules.
we don't. No, that's the Senate. We don't.
Well, that sucks.
If you...
Who made up that rule? I asked for an aye vote on the McNulty amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
That sounds good. Representative Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sometimes we, I think, can get too clever by half. And in discussion here in the well, I believe that we have some consensus. I don't want to speak for Representative Duran, but I was a supporter of this bill, and I'm also a supporter of local control. And I'm asking you for a yes vote on this amendment. I think that a yes vote on the prior might have been the right move, but we're beyond that and we can't reconsider. So if you would please think through this, make sure you're clear on what we're voting, whatever rules that we use in this chamber. But a yes vote on this amendment will certainly resolve some concern about local control that the lobby is expressing. I think that with this amendment, we actually have something very close to a poison pill that would take this bill down. I still support the bill, but I think that we need to fix this. I ask for an aye vote on this Cow amendment.
Representative Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I also rise in support of the McNulty amendment. As I see it, the amendment that was put on during seconds creates a gray area and removes the existing black and white that now exists in statute. If you violate, you're shut down. If you're fined, you stay open. The amendment that was adopted creates this gray area where locals can pick and choose what hours you can and can't be open. So by voting for this Cow, you are putting us back to where it's black and white. You violate, you're shut down. You're good, you stay open.
Representative Waller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, members, I got to tell you, I'm still not quite sure where I am on this, and I know that there's been a lot of confusion over this amendment, but certainly my awareness has been raised. In fact...
Hold on one sec, Representative Waller. Members, we are sitting as a House. Please return to your desks and stop any side conversations.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Waller.
You really just blew my punchline.
Sorry, I thought you were actually trying to make a legitimate point.
I'll start over since nobody heard it. You know, members, there's been a lot of vigorous debate on this issue, and I appreciate that. I still am not quite sure where I am, but my concern has been raised significantly. In fact, never has my concern been raised more significantly on an issue that I'm absolutely incapable of staying awake long enough to enjoy. It
That's
would have
what we
been
were
much
waiting
funnier
for.
if I'd got to do it in whole the first time around.
Yeah, you better keep your day job. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Waller, you can go to sleep anytime now you want to. I rise in opposition to this Committee of the Whole amendment, and I disagree with Representative Priola and others who say that this doesn't expand local control. It does, I thought, in a very acceptable way. It makes this bill more acceptable to me. If you're for this amendment on the bill and against the amendment on the cow, you are for more local control. And I would like to point out that this amendment has nothing to do with shutting people down. As a matter of fact, it gives local governments who find bad actors and are convinced that they need disciplinary action, it allows the local government, rather than shutting an establishment down or suspending their license for a particular time, to actually, instead of that, lessen their hours of operations. I think that the bill is a good, it's a good amendment to the bill, and I ask for a no on the cow.
Representative Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also ask for a no on the cow. Just about 45 minutes ago, when we were debating this, I was saying that local governments should be able to close bars at an earlier time if that's right for that government. People voted that down, and one of the amendments that Representative Duran introduced has said, I'm giving them authority to shut down bad actors a little earlier if that's right for local governments, because I'm in support of local government. This body supported that amendment. It is just, I think it's a good idea to support this amendment, because the whole argument was just go after bad actors, and here's a tool to go after bad actors. I think what we want to do with all of this, with this entire bill, is give the ability to local governments to have more control over bad things that happen late at night around bars. This is just one very small thing. What happens right now, if there's a bad actor, and it's incredibly hard to prove that there ever is, and restaurants typically get shut down for a day or 2 days or 3 days, and then they reopen. This is not, helping shut down restaurants. This is saying, if you, restaurant, go through a hearing for being a bad actor, here's one thing, you're just going to have to shut a couple hours earlier. Right now, typically they have to shut down for several days. That's what happens. This is a good tool that Representative Duran introduced to make the bill better, that got support from you all, and now it's being taken off. And I urge a no vote on the Committee of the Whole amendment.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I was a little tongue-tied when I was up here before. I did not mean I wanted you to vote no on the Committee of the Whole report. We've done a lot of good work. I meant I'm asking for a no vote on the amendment to the Committee of the Whole, the second Duran amendment to the Committee of the Whole. Thank you.
Representative McNulty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So let's be clear. If someone is in violation of their liquor license, they don't get shut down. They have their liquor license suspended for a day or a week or a month, depending on how grave the violation was. They can still sell food and French fries and soda pop. Representative Scott is a big fan of Fanta. Peach flavored. They can still operate. But if an establishment sells liquor to someone who is not of age, violates another provision of their license, it should be revoked or it should be suspended. the hours that they can serve liquor should not just be curtailed. This is a pretty significant enterprise that we're entering into, alongside other experiments that we're doing in this state. If someone sells booze to a minor, they should have it suspended, they should have it revoked. They should not just have their ability to sell liquor curtailed. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just wanted to clarify, I know that there's confusion clearly on this cow amendment, and there were those in the lobby whose concerns were addressed. The Colorado Licensed Beverage Association supports this cow and stripping this amendment off. It does create a difficult and confusing and experimentary, as Representative McNulty pointed out, regulatory structure for those that are working in this industry. So I would ask for a yes vote.
Representative Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask for a no vote on the cow. I think there's nothing in here that says the locality can't still strip the license or prohibit the sale of liquor. What it does is gives them a little other tool. Maybe the violation isn't significant enough. Maybe it's something that I'm not even aware of that's on a low level. And they're saying, we're going to restrict your hours a little bit. So I ask for a no vote on the cow.
Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I've heard the adage down here that, it depends on which side of the aisle you're on at any given time about not making a bad bill better. But I was just thinking this morning, you shouldn't make a bad bill badder either. I urge a yes vote on the McNulty amendment. Here's what I fear. The status quo is that a liquor authority, city or county, must suspend or revoke. And that's a very harsh penalty. It was set that way as a matter of statewide concern to not create jurisdictions that were easier, that were notoriously lax about this. But my concern is actually on the other end of the spectrum. I mean, the purpose of this bill already is to allow local governments to tinker with closing hours. Now, don't be put off by my use of the word tinker. Maybe that's good public policy. I think it's really bad public policy because it just has people go from bar to bar till they finally hit the one that closes at 4:30 and they endanger everybody in between. But, well, and let me back up. I think perhaps had this amendment come alone, I might have been in favor of it. But what I see now is that the local authorities are looking for reasons. They're looking for reasons to be able to curtail someone's hours. And I think that that will make for very aggressive enforcement so that they can do a lengthy restriction on someone's hours and have a lot of places closed down earlier than they otherwise would. You say, well, they had violations. Look, it's a tough business, and a lot of responsible people work very hard not to have violations, but the fact of the matter is you can find a violation if you look hard enough, if you set them up. The authorities sometimes send teenagers in who look like they're 25 and send them in with a group and do things to do that. I would see a great potential for that if we introduce this into the bill. And for that reason, I ask for a yes vote on the formerly Duran amendment, now McNulty amendment to the Committee of the Whole report.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question for the House is the McNulty amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Becker, Buckner, Giroux, Janal, Hamner, Kagan, Kraft Tharp, Priola, Schaefer. Representative Kagan. Close the machine. With 52 aye votes, 10 no votes, 3 excused, and 0 absent, the McNulty amendment to the report of the committee of the whole is adopted. Mr. Kohler, please read the final Duran amendment to the report of the committee of the whole.
Representative Duran moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in adopting the following Del Grosso Amendment L013 to House Bill 1132 to show that said amendment lost, that the Duran Amendment L008 to House Bill 1132 passed, and that House Bill 1132 as amended passed.
Representative Duran.
Thank you.
At least this amendment's a little clearer cut.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move this amendment to reverse the Del Grosso amendment that was put on the bill.
To the amendment? Do you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this issue has been challenging because it's clearly not a partisan one. And so with that, what this does, and this was Del Grosso's amendment that said that if local governments make a change, they have to do it citywide. And so I would ask that you vote to change that, because if we really want to give local governments more tools to be able to work with, then they should be able to designate particular areas like they do right now. In the city of Denver, there's particular areas that are designated with different rules because of if it's in a neighborhood or if it's, you know, just different situations come up. So by doing this, we're actually putting in a restriction that does not exist in our current law for liquor licensing. So I would ask for a yes vote.
Representative Del Grosso or Gardner? Okay, Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I respectfully request a no vote on this Cow amendment. The language you see down there is the amendment that went on during second reading. And it was put on there for a particular purpose. Now, Representative Duran says, well, this is local control again, and we want to do that, and this interferes with local control. Liquor authorities, cities and counties ought to be able to set their hours and say who gets to open and close when. The fact is, right now, because we declared it a matter of statewide concern many, many years ago, the authorities can set all sorts of restrictions, but they can't say that you have to close earlier than 2 or that you can open earlier than 7. It's 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. Representative Duran's bill introduces the specter, if you will, of local licensing authorities being able to say, okay, all you people downtown, you're still closing at 2. All you people in lower downtown, you can stay open till 3 or 3:30. All you people out on the west side, you have to close at 2:30. And all you people, I don't know, on the way to the airport, you can stay open till 4:30. Really? Really? That's what Representative Duran wants to give local licensing authorities the ability to do. This amendment that went on during second reading was to say, no, if you think it's a really good idea for people to stay open till 3, local licensing authority, then everybody gets to stay open till 3. You can't pick winners and losers. We approve of local control, but we don't want you picking winners and losers, just to throw all the phrases that everybody uses. Because there are public safety concerns about this. Really, seriously, folks. Think about this. We're not, I don't know, when, I hate to ask for a show of hands as to when any of you were in a bar till 2 a.m. I can tell you. 50, well, Well, you know, some people are more exciting here than I am. I probably haven't been in a bar at 2 a.m. in 50 years.
You weren't even 18 when you were 50 years ago.
Yeah.
No,
This is true, Mr. Speaker. The last time I was in a bar at 2 a.m., I was probably 11 years old. So.
They were called saloons.
And Representative Priola is right, Mr. Speaker. They were called saloons at that time. Seriously, members, think about this as a matter of public policy. The concern is, and the reason that the amendment was offered, and the reason it needs to stay on, is that if we start picking and choosing within these 4 square blocks, you're 3:30, and those 4 square blocks, you're 3 o'clock, and those square, you're just going to really set up the pub crawl. And then get in your car and drive to the other side of town. And by the way, I think I'll charge 50 cents more a drink because I'm the last place in town, or $1 more a drink. I'm the last place in town to drink. This is a bad cow amendment because it strips out what was a good amendment on seconds. I ask for a no vote.
Representative Del Grosso.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I won't talk very long at all because Bob, I think, summed it up, or Representative Gardner summed it up very well. But the reality is, this wasn't an amendment that I just dreamed up. This was an amendment that had wide support from those folks that are actually in the industry, the ones that are actually going to be affected by this law if it comes into place. And they are very worried that if this was to happen, that there would be a lot of picking winners and losers, and there would be those that would have a competitive advantage over others. And so I also urge a no vote on this.
Representative Court.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to be sure that we all understand that various communities have zoning laws that allow different neighborhoods to have different open and close times within, under the 2 o'clock time. So there are lots of neighborhoods in Denver that have bars, and on a variety of fronts, they have input. I mean, every neighborhood association in my district has a zoning group that looks at liquor licenses, looks at open close times, looks at all kinds of things. And so in Denver, they already have the authority to have different times to close depending on the neighborhood. That's local zoning. That's what Denver does. That's my understanding of the current Denver law.
Representative.
That's what I've been told.
Representative Gardner.
I'm wrong? Well, that's what I had understood. Sorry.
Representative Gardner.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'm not an expert on this area of law, but I would tell you that due to a Colorado Supreme Court case called Thunderbird or Thunderbird Burgers or something, what Representative Court sort of has represented to you may well be the case, that on the front end of a land use and zoning case, there may be, as a zoning restriction on the front end, not later, not as a part of liquor licensing itself, but as a zoning matter, there may be a restriction on opening and closing. But after that liquor, or after the land use approval is done, the liquor licensing itself is 7 a.m. to 2 a.m., and the restriction is not because of liquor licensing, it's because of the municipality or county's authority to engage in land use planning. It's a nuance, but it's a very important nuance. We're not dealing with people's municipalities, local governments' land use authority, and they do have that authority. So not applicable here. Thank you, Representative Court.
Representative Melton. Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I rise in opposition to the Duran-Cow Amendment. This isn't a partisan issue. What the original amendment did was it created an equal playing field for all restaurants and bars to be able to close at the same time. If, for instance, I'm in Aurora and the the city or the municipality chooses to say that the bars in my district can be open till 3, but the bars in your district will only be open till 2, that creates an unfair advantage between different communities in different areas. It creates a disparity by not having this in the bill. So I urge a no vote on the Duran amendment.
Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this amendment. I believe that it is what we talked about in committee was how actually in a neighboring city that there are some bars that close at 11, some close at midnight, some at 1 a.m., some at 2 a.m. So there are already this kind of dynamic of closing at different times, and I believe this is more of a matter of local control to allow for cities and towns to be able to control as to where the bars are closing at different times. So I support this amendment. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question for the House is the adoption of the Duran amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Buck, Buckner, Giroux, and Williams. Close the machine with 15 aye votes, 16 aye votes, 46 no votes, 3 excused, and 0 absent. The Duran amendment to the Committee of the Whole report is lost. There are no further amendments, thank you, to the Committee of the Whole report. Members, the question before the House is the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole as amended. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Humphrey, Kagan. Close the machine with 62 aye votes, 0 no votes, 3 excused, and 0 absent. The report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Announcements and introductions. Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And for those of you who watch the show House of Cards, today is the day. It is here. Season 2 is back.
And if anyone tweets anything about it, because my husband's out of town, I can't start watching it, you get fined. Any other announcements or introductions? Seeing Representative Young.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I'm working on it. Sorry, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the Flood Disaster Study Committee, just want to remind you that we're meeting in room 112 at 1:30 this afternoon.
Representative Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I know it's been several hours. Did not want you to forget about your iPad training. If you've not had your iPad updated, today would be the day to do that. From noon to 2 o'clock, House Committee Room 109. And don't forget to pick up your whatever pops from the Colorado Licensed Beverage Association in the back of the room. Happy Valentine's.
Any further announcements? Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, members, thank you for moving well through the calendar. We got most everything done that we needed to do this Friday, and we got out by getting out by a little after 12:30, and I really appreciate everybody's work and good decorum in doing it. I move to lay over the remainder of the calendar.
Seeing no objection, the balance account will be laid over till Monday. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until 1 p.m. this afternoon, at which point we will adjourn until Washington's birthday, February 17. So please be here. We're not on vacation at 10 a.m.
Seeing no objection, have a great weekend. Happy Valentine's Day. The House will stand in recess until 1 p.m.